Okay, so we are now starting our fourth and last panel, Museum Publics, which extends the debate towards questions of the audience by exemplifying public programs and other projects undertaken by artists, curators, and educators. The panel aims at disclosing who forms the public of an art museum, who is represented by it or who feels represented by it, and how audience address is and can be directed in order to integrate global concerns. Processes of representation, participation, diversity, and inclusion are under debate here, while at the same time aspects of the discussion that have been touched upon earlier come to play again and can be summed up in a final conclusion. So this panel's chair is Nora Sternfeld. I am very happy that she is here, and I will now introduce her. I mean, I'm basically always reading the biographies that are also in the booklet, but never mind. So Nora Sternfeld works as an educator and a curator. She is professor for curating and mediating art and director of the curatorial major Kumma at the Aalto University in Helsinki. And she is co-director of ECM Educating, Curating, Managing Master Program in Exhibition Theory and Practice at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. She is the co-founder and part of TRAFOK, Office for Art Education and Critical Knowledge Production, based in Vienna. And she is also part of Free Thought, a platform for research, education, and production based in London, always with a series of collaborators that I'm not going to name here. And in this context, she was one of the artistic directors of the Bergen Assembly in 2016. So, and also she publishes on contemporary art, museums, exhibition theory, education, politics of history, and anti-racism, and is part of the editorial board of Bildpunkt, magazine of the Viennese Artists Association, IG Bildende Kunst. And I think I'm going to stop here and welcome Nora Sternfeld.
Thank you so very much. I am really happy to be here and really happy to have the chance to moderate a panel with people, I think, who are in a very interesting way challenging all we are debating here. I didn't want to play the game of someone who will sum up something while at the same time saying something I want to say myself. So I decided I divide the 15 minutes that I'm asked to contribute in two parts, 7 minutes now for what I have to say somehow in relation to the topic, and 7 minutes after the talks where I would like to try to understand them together and bring them in relation. So the first 7 minutes start now. I am a bit astonished by the fact that everyone in this conference seems to believe that education is what will help us. We have heard from the very first lecture that while we have a lot of thoughts in relation to everything museums do in the moment, and I think we are right to have a lot of thoughts, we have to talk about them. It seems as we would not have a lot of thoughts in relation to education. It feels like it's like a common externalization of all the problems that might exist in this world. From the neoliberalization to the ongoing and more fascization of our societies. And I'm just asking myself who can deal with this burden? What can it mean for us? How can we work under these conditions? And I'm sure it's a symptom of something. I cannot grasp it completely. I think it's a symptom of an pedagogicization of our society altogether that is related to neoliberalism. It's also a symptom of a certain speechlessness that gives us puts us in the need of seeing a solution somewhere else. And maybe it makes sense to be speechless a bit together and to see if something might come out of that. And maybe this is also a mean of education. I want to kind of introduce a bit in these questions that beside of these high expectations are at the beginning of this panel. The first one is who constitutes the public of a museum of art? And the other one, who feels represented by it? Which is very interesting. I mean, we have heard, I think, extremely well put by Wendy Shaw in the last moderation, that these institutions we are working in, these institutions we are referring to, are at the same time rhetorically very open and quite alienating. And what happens if we ask ourselves who feels represented? I mean, there's a matter of representation here and a matter of feelings that both seem not to relate to let's say, a more radical democratic understanding of the museum as a place of a possible dissensus. I mean, a place of dissensus would not be a place where anyone is represented in this sense, like a picture on the wall that is showing me, or where everyone should feel represented. So under these conditions, what would be an educational perspective towards what Louis Kamnitzer has formulated as the main questions that the museum should bring up? Obviously, his main questions were related to education. It was, let me remind them to us, what are the conditions of production? Who is the museum serving? Who is the art serving? What is the problem it is serving? Is it well served? Is the piece indispensable? Is it for me or for someone else? And what is in it for me? The beautiful point in it is that actually I am not represented in these questions. I am actually challenged. I'm challenged to work out something that is for me in this last question. So all these questions are deconstructing the questions of this panel. To quote Stenka Badovinac, one could say, these questions are not representing a public, but thinking another possible public. They are addressing me in my potential of becoming. So if we ask who is represented, then, it reminds me a bit to the question of who will be global if you will have a global curator here. What would it mean that someone would be global? Someone would be represented by an institution. Is it about that? Is it about being global or being represented? Or is it not more, and we discussed this a lot, about the lack of the Western museums about their provinciality that makes them so much less heterogeneous than the cities we live in? And by this, I also mean the provinciality of these elitist distinctions we talk about. So I think what we have to unlearn is actually both the provincialism in relation to the provincialism and even racism of the discourses, and the provincialism of the classism of these institutions. And we have to find a way. We have to find a way not to make these two questions that are against each other. We have to stop to do that. I think we did that for a long enough time. So, this is, let's try to aim that. Let's try to unlearn the institution and let's try to unlearn the preconception of the public of the institution. And I am really happy. I think I am in the best situation ever that I can present you three speakers who all think theory and practice together, and in whatever they have done, have actually challenged existing institutions. So I'm really glad to present them. The first speaker is Ahmet Ögüt, who, as an artist, in his practice is doing this but not in a way, as we have heard about it with Zdenka Baton-Vinash, not in a way if he is rethinking institutions, rethinking collections, rethinking societies with their borders and so on, then he's doing it in a way in which a new imagination is very practically lived. So I think I can present Ahmet Ögüt as someone, or let's say he is in his biography presenting himself as a social cultural initiator, artist and lecturer. He is the initiator of the Silent University, which is an autonomous knowledge exchange platform by refugees, asylum seekers, and he's working across a variety of media. He worked for many institutions, Van Abbe Museum, he was part of the British Art Show, he he was part of the Matrix program at the UC Berkeley Art Museum, the 11th Guangzhou Biennale, and so on. So obviously, what he's doing has an impact at many places, but what he's especially doing is challenging the existing understandings of what the public is. So in this sense, it's really great to have the chance to speak with you about this topic. I present all of them, I thought, and then we do as we did before, because I think it's really nice to have you one after the other. The second speaker is Paul Goodwin, Director of the Research Center for Transnational Art Identity and Nation, and Chair of Black Art and Design Studies at the University of the Arts in London. I understand that Paul Goodwin will speak about his role as a curator at Tate Britain, and he, in his work, also has challenged traditional notions of audience development and diversity. So exactly what we were talking about. I mean, instead of creating a public, target a public, what we will hear is about challenging the very idea of targeting. And I mean, with all its also racist preconceptions and neoliberal preconceptions that are in these ideas. The third speaker I'm very happy to present is Nora Razian, the head of programs and exhibitions at the Sursock Museum in Beirut. She curates the temporary exhibitions and public programs there, and before she went to Beirut, she was curator of public programs at Tate Modern and Tate Britain, and has taught at Goldsmiths College Center for the Arts and Learning, where she co-developed a module on critical pedagogies. So I'm looking forward to hear how critical pedagogy can challenge what can be seen, done, and said. Ahmed, it's your turn.